Welcome to Finance Leaders Retirement Insights, the broadcast where we sit down with thought leaders in the world of finance who reveal their unexpected wisdom on the issues impacting retirement.
Welcome to the Finance Leaders Podcast. This is the show where we highlight the stories, insights, and expertise of financial professionals making lasting impact on their clients and the industry. Today, we have a pleasure of speaking with Tom Basey, a lifelong learner, recovering engineer, and project manager turned entrepreneur, working in both the insurance and technology field. Tom, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Daniel. It's great to be here. I'm grateful for your hosting. I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Awesome. Tom, your journey from engineer to project management to become an entrepreneur in the insurance field is fascinating. Was there a particular moment or experience that made you decide to take this leap and this journey?
Well, actually, I am in this journey by accident. So no, as you might imagine, there's a series of steps. Candidly, I wanted out of corporate America. Project management, by definition, there are deadlines. We're trying to make it by a certain time, and there's interim deadlines. There's a lot of stress. It was pre-COVID, so I was commuting an hour. So I wanted out. Actually, if you have an undergraduate degree at a local university, you get certified to teach. So I wanted to give back. So I was going to leave corporate America, and I was going to teach. And I'd already taken all the coursework online while I was still working. All I left was student teaching. And I'd already substitute taught in a bunch of local high schools. And then somebody came to me and explained to me this insurance and entrepreneurship in a way that I was like, so I had to call the university and say, I'm going to mothball this a little bit. And I haven't looked back. So actually, it was by accident or happenstance that I'm on this journey, really. I was already getting out of the engineering project management to education, and it didn't happen. Instead, I'm doing this independent insurance brokerage. So it's by accident, but I love it.
Okay. That's awesome. Now, making this transition to entrepreneurship, it's a fairly big change. I mean, like you said, going from corporate America, going to being an entrepreneur. What have been some of the most rewarding parts of this journey for you so far?
Well, the rewarding parts are time, number one. So last year in particular, I've emphasized time. They'll say time is money, and actually I've come to the realization, no, time is much more valuable than money, because in theory, you can lose money, get it back. There's different, but time, it's kind of constant, and you're losing it all the time. So so suddenly now I can decide which hours I'm going to work during the days, which days I'm going to work. And so that's the big thing. Like I said, for my previous remarks, I was spending a lot of time on the road, literally. And then similarly, I get to choose it, where if you're working in a corporation, you have some kind of boss that determines your priorities, that kind of stuff, and you have to request permission for a vacation. So the biggest single reward is control of my time.
You know what? You're right. When I tend to look at it this way, you know what? A lot of people that have, work in the corporate America or work in the corporate world, have a job. They often are spending a lot of time chasing after money. There's actually a quote, I think it was, I can't remember now who said that, but he says people are so busy working, they don't have enough time to make money. When you become an entrepreneur, when you're looking at wealthy entrepreneurs and business owners, they look at things a little bit different. They look at things that they spend a lot of money to buy back their time, because they understand, like you mentioned, that time is really not a renewable resource. Once time's up, time's up. You can't go and get more time, from that perspective. So listen, you describe yourself as a lifelong learner and someone who really loves helping people. How have those values shaped the way that you approach your work and build relationships with your clients currently?
Well, so number one, I continue to learn. So I have to understand the nuances of these different solutions. So by the way, I do not do property and casualty. I don't protect things, I only protect people. But even within the scope of protecting people, there's a lot of different types of health and life insurance solutions. So I have to learn. So I continue to learn. And then I continue to learn as an entrepreneur. So that's how I fulfill that. On the contrary, I hinted educator. I don't like to be sold to, nor do I like to sell. So I take a consultative or educational approach. So I meet with people where they are, over Zoom, at a local coffee shop, or at the legacy way. But I will do this at the kitchen table, sit around and help people understand. So I'm studying, I'm learning, and then I'm sharing that with people. And that's the way I work. It's a consultative approach. And I find it rewarding to both learn and then to share and help.
Yeah, so you've mentioned some technology, and things have definitely changed when it comes down to using Zoom, and that's how we're recording this right now. Can you talk about more how technology really plays a role in the work that you do and how it helps really you serve your clients better?
Wow. We don't have enough time to cover all of it, but yes, I am, as a recovering engineer, I'm still a technophile. So number one, just a communications mechanism. And I think that people have become post-COVID more sensitized and familiar with that. So certainly I use Zoom, and then social media. I reach out, I try to make connection with a lot of people. So I even use automation in social media. So I claim that Basey Insurance and or Tom Basey is basically on all social media platforms. And so there's a 14 or so that I have presence in one form or another. And I try to put content out there. I try to make it helpful. So I'm communicating with people through multiple things. And then actually, here's an example in here. I'm using additional above and beyond Zoom. I'm using another tool, OBS, to kind of make and enhance this so someone can see my logo. They can actually use a QR code to go to my website. I live and die by my calendar. And so anybody can jump onto my calendar at a time slot convenient for them that I've defined. I typically don't work in the evening, but they can jump on there and get on there. So I use it for productivity. I have been using AI for a couple of years, so I use that to investigate and plan, to generate communication. So I just use a lot of it, with the same objectives, to communicate effectively and to help people. But I use a lot of different technologies all over the place.
That's awesome. Again, that's where your engineering comes in.
Mhm.
That's great. Now, insurance can feel complicated or even intimidating for a lot of people. How do you
Mhm.
really help your clients feel more at ease and confident when making decisions about their coverage?
So I claim, but I like to let people make their own judgments. I claim to be able to simplify it. So that's what I do. My core competency is to sit down and explain a relatively complex solution. So number one, I start on a spectrum, another engineering term, kind of a variety of different solutions. I kind of at a high level will explain the spectrum, help people understand perhaps where they feel comfortable in the spectrum, and then spend a little bit more time. And I'll simplify concepts. This particular policy will address the objectives you're looking for. And by the way, and so I do that. I just have a human approach, because often someone will say, which one should I do, or what do I think? And I'll say, sir or ma'am, you know which one of these you should take? You should take the one that you feel most comfortable with. My job is to educate you and help you understand the solutions. You make the selection. But that's what I do. But I claim to be able to communicate to the extent that I can take the complex and distill it down to some primary, relatively consumable concepts.
Yeah, because I mean the financial industry is really, it's not about numbers. It's more or less about a relationship and
Mhm.
somebody feeling comfortable with what they should do or where they are at really comes down to, because they've got to be able to go and sleep at night and making sure that
Mhm.
they know that there is protection. Now,
That's the gauge, right? Sleep. That's the thing. You
yeah.
should. And when I say comfortable, know what I say is which one of these is going to make. If you don't have enough, you may not sleep at night. If you don't have enough protection. If you have too much, you may not be able to sleep at night because it's costing much. So yeah, that's a great way to say it. You got to be able to sleep at night.
Now, you often talk about protecting clients from what you call the deductible monster. Can you explain what that means and how you guide clients through the challenge?
So I can explain that. So that's the thing. I offer a spectrum of health insurance solutions, and that can be individual health insurance. Often, if somebody loses their job, well, then they've lost their health insurance. So I have solutions for that. When somebody turns 65 in the US, then they can get in the Medicare system, which again is kind of health insurance from the federal government, but it's not. You add some stuff on there. So there's still these same major carriers. So number one, some people don't understand what a deductible is. And so I'll help them understand that. And then I'll compare plans across multiple carriers, because I'm independent. I'll look at all the major carriers, and sometimes you want to make that decision. The lower that deductible is, but there's a balance. Typically, the lower it is, the more it's going to cost you. So I help people understand the deductible, and then I help them shop across multiple carriers to find the one, back to our point, that they're most comfortable with. As a general, the lower the deductible, the better. But guess what? It costs you more potentially out of pocket. So I help people shop carriers to optimize that.
Okay, now, you know what, when it comes down to insurance industry or pretty well any industry, there's often a lot of competition and other advisors, obviously, that are there. Now,
Mhm.
what do you believe that kind of sets your approach apart from others in the industry?
That's a great question. And for one thing, I do kind of look at it from a point of abundance. That is, there more people that need help than I can help. So I really don't look at it from a competition standpoint. But I do find that for a variety of different reasons, for example, some people mesh and communicate better with others. So for one, I'm fluent in English. I'm fluent in Spanish as well. So those two languages, I help people in there. There are plenty of people that can speak other languages. I'm probably not your guy if you want to use either one of those languages. If you want to use those two, then I'm going to be able to use my understanding, my expertise, and my consultative approach to help people. And then also regionally, Here in the U.S., you got to be licensed in a state to offer the solutions. You get it in your home state first, and then you get it licensed in other ones. And I am licensed in 20 something states now. I think 25 or 26. And so really it's a matter of being able to communicate, meet someone where they are. And that's the thing, I'm willing to go to someone's home. The closer it is, the better, and the quicker I can do that. So a combination of my willingness to provide customer service and my capabilities do that. And I do think I am easier to find than other people. You can do an internet search for me, you can social media. But at the end of the day, I'm pleasant, I'm professional, I'm reliable, I'm unbiased, and so that's the thing. I kind of eliminate a lot of people by those. So that's my. I don't have a better response for you than that, but that's my take.
All right, no, that's great. Now you work with quite a variety of clients, from individuals, employees, also Medicare beneficiaries. How do you adapt your solutions to meet the unique needs of each of this group?
Well, the marketplace really kind of has defined that for them. And what I mean is I don't offer every single in the world for every single person. And so, for example, in for small companies, that's another thing. In theory, I could offer a health insurance solutions for big companies, but I really don't. My niche is smaller because I'm a small shop. I do have other agents that work with me, but we're a small business, so I offer health insurance solutions to small businesses. So regionally, there's simply just only one to single digit number of offerings that are available in their given market. So often the state or the market defines what options are there. Because I'm independent, I've got more than one typically. I don't want to be sole source. I'm not sole source. So if you've lost your job, I have between 1 and 5 carriers, depending on where you are, maybe more, maybe 1 to 7 carriers where we can look for individual. If you're over 65 and you're in the Medicare system, again, depending on where it is, I can have 10 or more solutions. And then there's smaller for that offer, because fewer companies are actually offering this small group health insurance, but I can do between 1 and 3 small groups. So really the market conditions dictate what my options are, but they are defined within each one of those 3 distinct markets that I service. The products are kind of already there. In other words, if you're in the Medicare field, you can only kind of get either a Medicare supplement and a drug plan, or you can get an advantage plan. Those are your options. We just look at the different carriers. So there's different product solutions offered by different carriers, often defined kind of by the industry. Industry pretty much defines there. And there are a few outliers, admittedly. Every once in a while, I do have some kind of something in my back pocket if none of those solutions work. But the vast majority of the solutions I provide are kind of what we'll call industry standard.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's great. You help a lot of clients really protect themselves from unexpected financial events like health issues or final expense. What do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions that people have about insurance, and how do you help them to see it differently?
So that's a great question. So number one, I'm a cheapskate at heart. So I like to try to not spend more money, but yet simultaneously I'll also recognize the need to do so. And so I think the challenge many people have is, well, that's not going to happen to me, or I don't have to worry about it till later. And that's the interesting thing about insurance. By definition, the younger you are, the cheaper it is. So often the sooner you address it, the better off you are. So again, back to educational. So I like to share with people. Now, when I share, there's 2 different things. I do know some statistics, so I will share those with you, and that plays well with engineers like myself. So I'll throw a couple out, and then I'll give you the alternative, which are stories. I like to share my personal. I actually have all these products pretty much that I've used, so I can talk about it. So I can either say, hey, did you know that 40% of the bankruptcies that occur in the United States are due to some health-related issue? So it's important to be protected from that. Otherwise, you're risking bankruptcy. So it's almost like, can you afford to not have some kind of protection? 70% of the people that make age 65. So not everybody makes age 65. When they do, 70% chance you're going to need some long-term care, for example. You're simply not going to die overnight in your sleep. That's what I hope to do, but it doesn't happen. So I'll share that. And then that's the thing. I have a long-term care policy. 6-7 years ago, I didn't even know what long-term care is. Now I understand long-term care. And the good news is there's a lot of information available to help one find out how much it costs. It varies some state to state, just like economies are, right? But how much does a long-term care cost? And then really to protect yourself, there's a variety of solutions. One can get a standalone long-term care policy, or one can get a life insurance policy with a long-term care rider. I have one of those solutions in place, and I can talk about how I chose it. Like a man will last statistically 3.8 years in long-term care. I have 4 years worth of coverage, and I'm not going to buy more. I bought that. I bought it when I was younger, and I got a good price on it. Now that I'm older, it costs me more to protect myself. Well, the other thing is, my father had some form of dementia, and actually, sometimes when people have Alzheimer's, dementia, or something, physically they may be healthy, but their brain is going, actually they last longer. They last 8 years. So it's just something to think about. So I'll talk through and explain people that. Think about your personal experience, your genetics, your environment, and let's make a decision that you feel good about. But I'll either share some statistics, facts, that kind of stuff, or describe stories of my own personal experiences to help people understand and help them make a decision that they're comfortable with.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up a good point. I mean, a lot of people don't understand, like even with, when we're talking about, everybody kind of knows about life insurance, and there is, long-term care, there is critical illness, and the stats a little bit better than I, but I know from my days in the industry that, more claims are paid out when it comes down to somebody's critical illness than they are for the death benefit on their policies that they have, or more foreclosures happen on houses because somebody gets ill as opposed to the death. So
Mhm.
that's an important point that you're bringing up.
And I'll show someone to your point there. The lowest, cheapest life insurance I can offer is just a straight term insurance. You can pick 10, 30 years, and that's all it is. And so the good news is you'll pay some minimum monthly premium, for example, or quarterly, whatever you want to pay. And when you pass away, whoever you designated as your beneficiary will get that money, and that's great. But what then I'll show someone is for a little bit more, you can pay a little bit more monthly and you can get living benefits. So for example, in the example of a critical illness or a terminal illness or different riders you can add on there, you pay a little bit more and that money can be available. Because so I think everybody should have life insurance, but I believe you ought to pay a little bit more, not just the lowest end, at least if you're going to do a term. So that way you get 6 months to live with a pancreatic cancer. You can get those monies now, because sometimes, to your point, you can get bankrupt before the person passes away and you got there. So that's an example of kind of just helping people understand the options available.
Yeah, no, exactly. You bring a great point. And the other part of it too, we were talking about uh, insurance. And I mean, insurance is in case something happened. You were mentioning that before. That's really what insurance is for. Nobody needs insurance until they need insurance.
And then it's
it's
too late
like,
to get it typically. Yeah, you can't get it typically once you need it.
yeah, that's where it comes down to it. Like, you know what? Just like, when you're driving a car and you get a broken windshield, if you don't have it insured already, you can't insure something that's already broken. That's
Mhm.
unfortunately how people don't think about it with their health and what's happening. So, one of the things that I kind of going through your social media, you mentioned that networking and building relationships seems to be a really big part of your success. How has your
Mhm.
ability to connect with others really help you to shape your, business and your career?
So we talked about the transition previously. Despite having a lot of success in corporate America, I was a senior project manager in a big telecom company. It was great. I was an employee. I didn't have to build the business. I had to execute the plan someone else. That was a big change for me. I had to learn how to grow a business. So I had to meet people at the end of the day. If I sit at my home office, the business people aren't knocking on my door asking if I can help in this, or particularly they don't know. So I had to learn how to basically, I use the word outreach. So I had to learn outreach. And so I joined one or more chambers of commerce. I've been in a couple different ones and I stick with some with others. But at the end of the day, I had to learn how to find other business owners, find people. I had to learn how to be an entrepreneur. My mindset was a project manager for a big company where here's the big project, the budget's already set. Maybe I have to quantify the budget and request it. But at the end of the day, I just executed. Whereas a business owner, you got to make decisions. You got to make decisions what markets you're going to serve, just like which products you're going to offer. So I had to learn. I had to learn a lot about that. But at the end of the day, that was the biggest transition for me. So I joined chambers of commerce. I joined networking groups. I'm a member of two chambers of commerce currently locally near me. I'm a member of one networking group that is virtual, and then I attend other ones all the time. When COVID happened, that became even more important. So I have clients in Hawaii and clients in Virginia that I've never been in the same room as them, but I provide good service for them. So, yeah, it's cliche, but it's hard to be in our business not use cliche sounds. But your network is your net worth. It's very important.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah. No, I totally agree with you when it comes down to, and again, the business, it's all about building relationships. And that's what, I tell advisors from the perspective of, yeah, you need to go and work and make sure that you invest, time and effort and, into your network, because yeah, as you mentioned, it's your net worth, at the end, the success you're going to have will depend on the kind of network that you have gone and built. So looking ahead, what changes or trends do you see coming in the insurance industry, and how are you preparing to adapt to them?
Well, I think it can. So, for one thing, when I first started, so I'm over 6 years in, actually, paper applications, we're still the majority. So the good news to my viewpoint is it's getting more and more electronic. So I continue to be more and more electronic. So I I meet with people, I engage with people electronically, I enroll them electronically. Actually, underwriting, getting because at the end of the day, a policy is a contract between the insured and the country and the company that's doing it, the insurer. And AI, I can tell, right, is continuing to decrease the approval time. So the good news is things are getting faster. You can get protected sooner. I continue to exploit that, utilize that, help clients take advantage of it. And the main thing I want to, and then actually, so scalability. I have my agency. I've got other people I work with. It's easier and easier to get appointed in other states to help other agents get their license, and so I'm scaling as well. So I'm pleased about that. I'm able. It's the electronic, digital, virtual, whatever you want to say, evolution that continues is very beneficial to the agency or for the industry. It helps us service more people better and faster.
Yeah, no, technology and AI has certainly made things a lot easier. And again, I always tell people you can either go and fight it or you can embrace it. And embracing it will be a lot easier than fighting it because it's here to stay. So,
and to your point, I don't necessarily even like all of them, but I agree with you completely. In other words, yeah, there's things I don't like, and I'm concerned about things, but I concerning and to do it. I think, and so to your point, people have to be careful. You don't you can it's easier to fool someone. So I think unfortunately fraud will become easier with AI. So it's important that people pay attention. But so to your point, yeah, there's things I don't like about AI, but there's no way I'm going to ignore it. I'm going to go ahead and embrace it and use it to my advantage and the client's advantage.
yeah, no, exactly. Now, your background as an engineer gives you a unique perspective. How has kind of that experience really influenced the way that you approach problem solving and building your business and in the insurance field?
One of the things that maybe the most fundamental one is, well, I guess there's two. One, embracing new technologies. As an engineer, that happened all the time. I didn't sit still. I was continually learning either new technologies to implement and put in solutions or to use in the process. So I continue to embrace new technologies because I understand the efficiencies they provide, and then a process approach. I've actually got this process that I've built up, kind of showing, hey, the first part is outreach, the second part is then onboarding, and the third part is customer service. And when I take that process approach, then I try to improve. So that's the thing. I try to improve what I do, and I make those improvements kind of by looking at steps in the process and looking at the input and the output of the process. What do you have to put into that? How much time, effort, money does it take? How good quality is it? So I think the embrace of technology and taking a process approach is how I best use my engineering background towards this. And that thing, you can do it in any business. I'm doing it in this protection business, but that could apply in a sandwich shop too.
Yeah. No, technology has changed, and you mentioned COVID. COVID has kind of sped up a lot of the technology changes that were done because, yeah, you were not able to travel, we were not able to do different things. So it opened up, I think, people to being much more open to Zoom and having meetings over Zoom and things like that. So no, that's great. So for someone really thinking, working with an advisor like yourself, what's the one thing that they really should know about so the process become smoother and and really explain to them why it's so important to really get guidance when it comes down to having their protection set up.
Well, number one, what I would offer, even if you're getting a new roof put on your house, I think you go and talk to at least 3 different people. Kind of doing words. Don't just work with the first person you come across. I'm a proponent of kind of shopping. So talk to 3 different people. That way, if nothing else, you get a feel for what is important to you for whatever function you're looking for. So that's saying, if I'm your health and your life insurance solution, talk to 3 different people. Do you trust the person? Do you have a good rapport with the person? Can you communicate with them? Do they have the solutions that you want? Do they have a variety? In other words, so I tend to be a proponent of independent folks rather than captive. If someone is captive with a particular company, then they can only offer you the solutions that company have. And sometimes sometimes there's a better alternative, either from price or functionality. So I think you talk to multiple people, check the rapport, see about the availability of the different solutions they have, and then maybe even do a little bit of bake-off. If you can find 1 or more people that you can communicate with, and if they have multiple solutions, well, then can you say, I'm turning 65 in this state. These are my doctors. These are my meds. Show me what options you provide, then take a look at them. So that's kind of an approach I would do. So it's shop, communicate, bake off, and make a selection that, again, that same thing, that you can sleep at night, you feel comfortable with because you got it. You got to trust them and have a good rapport.
Yeah, and you bring a good point, and we were talking about that before, that it's that, hey, what do you feel comfortable with? I mean, just
Hmm.
because you talk to an advisor and they give you a solution, but you don't feel comfortable with them, you can go out there and see what somebody else, what's their personality is, because again,
Hmm.
this is somebody that you're going to be working over, with over the years, and you want to make sure that there is a certain level of trust and comfort that you have with
Hmm.
with that individual. So you bring a great point with that. Now, when you think about the future of your business, what's kind of the vision for the next 5 or 10 years, or where you are at? Are there any
Hmm.
projects or goals that you're kind of passionate about and you're working on right now?
Well, there's a couple different things I can. So I have a lot. So the first thing you said, passionate. So I just came from Atlanta last week, and so actually my non-profit passion is Alzheimer's Other Dementia. As I mentioned, my father passed away from that, and so actually I continue to work, but I have no specific. There's not like a number. I'm going to raise $1 million, but I continue to work with alz.org from a nonprofit standpoint because I want to have a positive impact on that disease, the research and the treatment and that. So that's passion. And then from a health and life insurance standpoint, I'm grateful. Again, I don't have specific numbers at this point in my life. I'm a bit of a Goldilocks, and I like it. So I too want to be comfortable. So if I establish a specific goal, then by definition, I feel a little bit of uh, pressure or stress to achieve it. I prefer what I do is I define what I'm doing. So actually, I continue. Like you used a phrase. You said, "Buy back your time." I read Atomic Habits a year or so ago, and I really enjoyed that. The one that's on my nightstand I'm reading right now is this. It's called Buy Back Your Time, and so I'm reading that book as well. And I made a change this year. I talked about living and dying by my calendar. Well, now I've taken my meetings down to a half hour increment typically, and so I'm getting to the gym. So I'm getting to the gym almost every day now. I've reduced meetings to half hour. My business is continuing to grow. I'm bringing other folks into the business, but I don't have a specific revenue goal. I don't have a specific size or state, for example, service area goal. But I'm refining. I continue to want to have weekends off, evenings off. I make exceptions, sure, either for the client or for my personal growth. But then I try to work during that time and yet still get exercise and eat well. So I'm, you know, I just have a I have my goals are more about my time. I want to enjoy my time. But the good news is, whether I'm working with this nonprofit or explaining somebody how a life insurance or a health insurance deductible works, I'm helping them and I'm enjoying it, but I'm doing it on my time.
You bring a great point, and I think this is where a lot of people kind of don't understand it. And you mentioned a couple of books that you have read. I know about the first one, Atomic Habits. I went through that. What it comes down to is you can get all of this advice. And again, we're going to go back to what we were talking about before. When you're talking to someone, tells you something doesn't feel right. It doesn't mean you have to do it that way. Unfortunately, most of us grew up in the world where it was like, hey, there was a right decision, there was a wrong decision.
Mhm.
What I've learned, again, speaking and working with different coaches and learning from successful individuals, no, there's just a decision. If it's a right or wrong, that's what you decide, right? What
Mhm.
what you are making is a decision. Then you get feedback, and according to that feedback, you can now assess it. And if it's a wrong decision, you don't have to go and keep on doing it. If it's the right
Mhm.
decision and it's actually supporting your life, and I think this is the point that I want to go to. When you look at all these things, at the end of the day, the life that you will get or what you will get out of life really depends on what you decide to get out of it, right? When I look at the game of life, what it comes down to, we're the ones that get to decide what the rules are. It's kind of like imagine playing a soccer game where you are, you're the home team, you're the opposing team, you're the referee, you get to select what stadium you play, you get to set what the rules are. You can go and stack the whole game where you can't lose. And from that perspective, it's a matter of looking at your life and making sure that your life is actually supporting you as opposed to feeling frustrated with what you're doing and where you're at. And again, a lot of it has to do with kind of your mindset and how you're looking at it. And I appreciate what you've mentioned, going like, hey, you know what? I don't set goals. There's nothing wrong with that. It works for
Mhm.
you, and you
Mhm.
should work your life the way it works for you, as opposed to trying to fit yourself into a box. And I think this is where in any industry and even in the insurance, like there are people that, you may give them advice, but it might not align with their thinking or their beliefs. You have the opportunity to help them, to show them, to maybe look at it differently. But the end of it, it is still their decision and making sure that it fits into their life. So,
Well said.
if you could give one piece of advice to our listeners about preparing financially, for the unexpected events or creating secure future, what would it be?
Well, I want to give two. I can't give one. So the first one one is you need a neutral third party. So I think they should partner with somebody, financial person. So I think that they shouldn't do that. But based on your previous remarks, what I also want to say is get self-educated. And you were talking about this. So I I did an MBA, and when I did the MBA, I did a lot of reading on personal finance. And we've talked about atomic habits, and I mentioned buy back your time. Those are more like productivity, but some of the classic ones, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and The Millionaire Next Door. I think people should read. So read, get educated. And I say that here's the other thing: technology, podcast. I do have the book on my nightstand, but I do a lot more listening to podcasts. And I think you were talking about kind of getting information. A time efficient way is podcasts. So I'm a proponent of reading podcasts, getting together with somebody else to talk it through. That's my aggregate answer.
Yeah. Well, listen, you mentioned the book that pretty well ended my financial career, if I'm going to go put it that way. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I was getting my
Okay.
CFP designation, and they're teaching me that my house is the biggest asset that I own. And then I read this little book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It tells me that my house is the biggest liability. And I'm sitting there going like, hold on, what's going on here? Who is telling the truth here? And again, you know what? A house, it's more, it's a home. There is that. But looking at it strictly from a perspective of how wealthy people look at, we were talking about, wealthy people, successful people, they spend money to buy back time. And what Robert was talking about there, that when you look at the house, if it's, an asset is an asset that generates revenue or generates cash flow. And it's just a different way of looking at it. And when I was looking at it, I'm like going, you know what? I like this new way of looking at things. And that completely changed what and how I was looking at everything around my life. Because at that time, unfortunately, a lot of times the financial industry kind of looks at, hey, how can we go and save, save, save? And I thought to myself after reading the book, going like, well, hang on, what if we flip it? And instead of focusing on save, 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 how do we go and create? How do we go and create more and put all of that energy into something different? So it's not saying that one is wrong and one was right. For me at that time, it caused me to go and change and really transform my life and lives of others around me, because I started looking at things from a different perspective that actually started to support the life that I'm doing and the way that I'm living. So
You said we might go down the rabbit hole. Let's go down that. So to your point, that actually explains the crazy accident that I had. So actually, to your point, if I had to summarize Robert Kiyosaki's his advice, it's accumulate cash generating assets, and that's hard to argue. That makes sense. No, no, please, I don't want any more. And so I remember when I read that, my son was still small, and I thought, let's do this at a micro level. And I thought, well, let's buy a single vending machine. What was the smallest piece of thing I could do that I could, we could do a rent home, right? But that would, so I wanted to buy one vending machine and kind of show him how. And it's a small model for business, as far as I'm concerned, because we had to go there and make sure there was inventory there and that kind of stuff. So that was my thought back in the day. And as you say this, I think maybe that's why the insurance industry resonated with. Like I was about to be the teacher, and I think what I realized with this person, each policy that I help someone with is a micro cash generating asset, and yet one that I don't have to pay taxes on or upkeep, or so that's kind of what happens. So I'd never thought about it, and so Kiyosaki's influence on me, because I mean I would go around and tell people you should read that book. They will tell you need to accumulate cash generating assets, and I think what happens, everyone goes, oh, each policy is a micro cash generating asset.
yeah. No, 100%. And what you're talking about is using leverage. It's really leveraging. And I think this is the biggest difference when I look at people. And again, this is not classifying people are successful or wealthy and people that are poor, but it's just looking at, listen, I'm originally from Czechoslovakia. I was born under communism. So you want to talk about scarcity mindset, all of that stuff, it's all been there. But it's a matter of start looking at that, people, the way that they look at finances on more of the scarcity side. If you ask them, hey, how to manage money, often it's almost the opposite of what wealthy people do, right? So for an example, people that are on the scarcity side, where I came from, where I lived most of my life, was like, how take good care of your money. Most people are taught, hey, you got to work hard for your money, and if you have money, you got to save it, and then don't borrow. Where when you go and look at people that are wealthy, their answers are almost opposite. Making money is easy. You know, borrowing money, leveraging is something they do all the time. You know, so there is this contrast between kind of these two worlds. I kind of call the one red world and the one blue world, but there is this contrast. And really what it comes down to when you're mentioning, when you're educating people and what, for an example, the book, you know, Rich Dad Poor Dad does, it just helps to shift the perspective and allows people to start to look at why do I believe what I believe around money or finances? And what I've
Hmm.
discovered that most people don't stop and think about that. And the
Hmm.
people that do start to realize that what they believe about their money is not even their beliefs. They're the
Hmm.
beliefs of either their parents, grandparents, society, teachers, whoever that is. And they
Hmm.
keep on repeating that same story and brings it to the next generation. And really what I'm hearing from you, reading that book, doing that with your son as far as educating him, helping to change the perspective because we don't have to keep on living in the same world where we came from. We have the opportunity to go and make change.
I would also, since we're down this rabbit hole, the other book that I always mention is The Millionaire Next Door. And actually, it's a completely different approach, if you will, but it arrives at the same conclusion to me. So that particular book, and they came out around the same time. There's been various updates to this
Yeah.
whole thing, but that book was done by, I think, Princeton academics, and they basically just took an empirical approach. They did a bunch of studies on millionaires and who they were. So one, they dispelled some myth. There was research got because some people might think, hey, it's all old money and all they kind of so they looked at that. And then they looked at stuff like how these people like although at the time, I don't know if this is still true, but at the time, 1 out of 10, like 20, 30 years ago, 1 out of 10 millionaires was a teacher. And it's not because of the money they made, it's because they understood early on. So they were relatively financially savvy, at least enough, and then they saved, they live below their means. And where other people, well, it's a business owner, it's a small business owner who lives modestly. A la Warren Buffett, extreme example. What I mean, you own a cleaner, but you live in a modest home, reasonable house. You don't spend it. So it's fascinating. So despite two different approaches, a lot of the same guidance comes out of it. And it comes down to financial literacy. But I like to kind of throw both those out there because admittedly, Robert Kiyosaki, he can be wrong about certain things. I think maybe he is about certain things now, but it doesn't matter. I can't argue with accumulate cash generating assets. That's I can't argue that.
100%. Listen, Tom, I've never met a person that was 100% right 100% of the time. It don't exist. So
Okay.
it's a matter of, you know, look at these books and look at these things and start looking at it. How does that apply to my life? What is it that I want? And I think this is the biggest challenge people often have is that they don't really know what they want or what they desire. And sometimes they feel like they cannot go and achieve it. And again, partly it has to do with the fact that they never really sat down and really thought about it and
Mhm.
really kind of, you know, taking it apart and start looking at, hey, what is it that I really want? What is it that I desire? What is the life that I want to go and live? And are there things that I can go and change? Because it's all about habits. Like you talked about the book Atomic Habits. Isn't wherever you are at right now is because of the daily small little choices and decisions that you have made over a period of time. A lot of people think that, oh, well, my life is like this because of major decisions you've made. Yeah, you know what? The house you're gonna buy, the car you're gonna buy, who you're gonna marry, yeah, those are fairly large decisions, but they're not the ones that are causing you the level of life that you have right now from the perspective of, you know, happiness and the things that you know, and how you're looking at life.
Mhm.
Because listen, you can decide and be happy right now. Happiness is not a result of something. Happiness is who you are, what you're being, you know, at the core level. And these are the things that a lot of people are kind of not aware of. And the one thing I want to bring up, and you brought it up, what, you know, the book Rich Dad Poor Dad and The Million Next Door, they taught principles.
Mhm.
And what most people don't understand that making money, being successful, running a successful business or having a business, there are certain principles that are universal. And if you understand the principles, things become a lot easier. The challenge, again, we were talking about, I grew up in the red world, you know, in the scarcity world. I was never taught principles. And when you look at the principles that I was taught, if you're looking at it, okay, I was taught principles, but they were not success principles. And those principles were, you know, save, 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 you know, the whole scarcity mindset, you know, you got to work hard for your money. You know, time is money, you know, and all of these things where you start looking at going like, no, hold on, the and I don't want to say the truth, but the reality is that for successful people, the opposite is actually the reality. And when I
Mhm.
started to shift from kind of the world that I came out of into this world, things started to shift for me and things started to become a lot clearer and much
Mhm.
easier to do because at the end of the day, and I'm just going to use the most simplest example, when you look at somebody losing weight, and I mean, there is more health advice there is, yet we have, obese epidemic, people are overweight. It's calories in and calories out. It's a very simple equation. You just got to make sure that if you want to lose weight, you don't put in more calories than you burn on a daily basis.
Mhm.
That's the simplest equation of that. And if somebody understands that, they're able to go and, lose weight from that perspective. Well, finances, business, everything else kind of works the same way. There are certain principles that people need to, go and understand.
Agreed. That's a great analogy. As I've remarked, I'm passionate about that as well. And the struggle is real. Fitness is harder than financial fitness, I think. But at the end of the day, like even the new takeaway. So here's the earth-shattering thing. It's about your diet. Oh, really? You gotta eat well, right? Your diet and your exercise. You gotta have some kind of activity to your point to either intake and burn the calories. Actually, the other one that in the Alzheimer's thing that they were talking about that I kind of know this intuitively is sleep. So I'm really concentrating on those
Yeah.
now. I want to have a good diet. I want to do plenty of exercise and I want to sleep well. But yeah, I concur with everything you're saying.
Yeah, no, 100%. And again, this is really what it comes down to. So, you know what? I'll challenge you on something. You said, listen, losing weight is actually very easy and simple. The
No,
reason
I
I
said
can say
that
that,
was harder.
yeah,
I would say the fun and the money was the
yeah.
losing weight is hard. It takes so much willpower. I'm sorry.
Well,
If I might,
you know what?
go ahead.
Yes and no. And again, this is not about, who's right or wrong. Reason I
Right.
can go and say that, if you met me in 2006, I was 260 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
In August of 2010, I was 230. Within 6 months, I was down to 170. And the reason I'm saying, and I'm not saying, and I'm not that it was simple and easy, but it was because losing weight wasn't the part. I learned something around food and I shifted the way
Yeah,
I looked at food, and that changed everything.
you're right.
Kind of like
I
we were
know you're
talking about
exactly
the rich dad, poor dad. So it's hard work. At the same time, I'll give you an example right now. You know what? I'm just the way I was eating food, I got back to about 190. Now, because I already kind of built the principle about food and what I was doing, now I was dealing with something else. Now the exercise. So I lost about
right. Hmm.
15 pounds. And yeah, it was a little bit more challenging, right? Because I already had the mindset, right? But at the end of it, again, we're down to calories in and calories out. That's really what it comes down to,
Hmm.
what food you're eating. But 100% diet, sleep, all these things have a lot to do with it. And
Hmm.
it's just having understanding. But it's not, listen, Tom, I look at it this way. We're not human doings. We are human beings.
Hmm.
And I've heard somebody that was speaking, and what they mentioned is saying that they were going and running, right? And their biological age compared to there is a difference between like your physical age and your chronological age. And this
Hmm.
person was a lot younger physically because of all the things that they were doing. And they said, "Well, what do you do?" "Well, I'm a runner." And this other person was listening, going, "Oh, it's about identity." Right? When
Hmm.
you start thinking about you're a runner, you just go and do running. Like that's what I do. I do
Yeah.
exercise and things. That's who I am. So for me, having a healthy body becomes easier because it's not something I have to do, it's who I am. And I think when it comes down to finances, everything, it's kind of the same thing. So yeah, we did talk about jumping down a rabbit hole. This is something we can talk about for
But they're
hours and
applicable.
hours.
You pulled up very applicable, right? I
Yeah,
love it.
yeah.
Oh,
So uh, listen, from the perspective of as we kind of get ready to close the show, if individuals want to get, our listeners wants to get kind of more information about you, the work, how can they get in touch with you from the perspective of, all the things that you offer?
mhm. So I want to talk to people. I love it. I've enjoyed this conversation. So my name is Tom Basey, and the insurance component, at least that thing, I do some other stuff too. But for Basey Insurance, I'm available on any platform I claim. So my request is that people connect to me on one or more platforms, whichever one it is. Now, admittedly, I do have a website, basey-insurance.com. I probably have the biggest presence though actually on LinkedIn. So they want to connect on LinkedIn, but literally LinkedIn, Facebook, Pinterest, TikTok, Blue Sky, Threads. Next door, Alignable. I'm everywhere, and I love to converse. I err on the verbose. So I just request people find me wherever. That's the thing. I want to meet them where they are. So find me where they are, and I'd love to connect and see if there's more conversation to be had.
I definitely see the passion that you have when it comes to networking and building relationships with others. So that's great. Listen, Don, thank you for sharing your insights and experiences with us today. It's been a pleasure having you on the Finance Leaders Podcast. I'm sure our listeners have gained valuable takeaways about navigating, essentially career transitions, integrating technology into their practice, and the importance of client-centric approach in the insurance industry. So thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for hosting. You've been a great host, and I'm grateful for the platform. Thanks so much for your time.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to the Finance Leader Podcast for more conversations with thought leaders shaping the financial industry. Until next time, take care and keep building your financial future on solid principles.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Finance Leaders Retirement Insights.